on the Vince Everett Ellison Show. We're going to talk about how Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, some say is the greatest speech of the 20th century. It's Marxist propaganda. It was anti-Christian. It was anti-America. I'm going to break it down for you today on the Vince Everett Ellison Show. All right, let's get this thing started. You know, the I Have a Dream speech, many have said is the greatest speech of the 20th century, maybe one of the greatest speeches in the history of the world. And I'm going to tell you the truth. Can't lie to you. Martin Luther King Jr. rocks that speech. It's great oratory. It's great to listen to. People enjoy it. Matter of fact, I think in almost every grammar school in the United States of America now, they have children recite it on King's birthday. But you know what, y'all? Slight problem with that speech. Do you know that speech was written by two communists? Yeah. Stanley Levinson and Clarence Jones wrote the I Have a Dream speech. Now, why would two communists, which means if you're a communist, you're an atheist, why would two communists write the I Have a Dream speech? They had all of this swirling rhetoric and all of this stuff in it, about this and that and the other. When you listen to the speech, it captivates you with this idea of brotherhood and, you know, loving one another and sacrifice. But when you get deep into the details of this speech, you see this speech is an anti-Christian, anti-American speech. And I know what y'all sitting there saying, Vince Ellison crazy, Vince Ellison tripping, Vince Ellison make me sick. He done went too far now. I Have a Dream speech, greatest speech in the world. Hell no. No. Give me a moment. I know all y'all's head about to explode. I know y'all all got your fist balled up, getting ready to bust the TV. About to do an Elvis Presley, just shoot the dadgum television right now. Bam! Shoot your iPhone right now. Bam! I have told you guys, and I've told you. I got a big brain and I think differently, okay? I don't just do what people tell me. To me, the most important word in the English language is why. I don't just believe what I've been told. I dig a little deeper, and I dig a little deeper, and I dig a little deeper. So let me tell you the story. I was a lot like y'all. Had the picture of King hanging up in my house. And you know, for the last week, I've been hitting Martin Luther King Jr. pretty hard, but I've been talking about his promiscuity and his hoe chasing and his drinking and, you know, I got something mixed up the other week when I said that Dolores Evans had written a book, I Testify. No, Dolores Evans was actually the woman that David Garrow says that King had an outside child with. She was living in California. Also, Don Newcomb, baseball player, told J. Edgar Hoover that King had an outside child about his woman, Dolores Evans. Matter of fact, the child, Andrew Young, officiated the child's wedding. Isn't that a coincidence? So anyway, I talked about King's private life and the orgies and the drunk and the fact that he was more like P. Diddy than he was like Jesus Christ. All that's well and good. Put it in the files, stay with it. So now I'm going to talk about his philosophy about, I don't know what the hell he's trying to do. I guess social change or politics or something, but he is mad about something. I think he's mad because black people and white people weren't going to the same bathrooms and eating together and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so King's whole premise started falsely. They believed that the biggest problem with black people in the 50s and the 60s and stuff was segregation. And they said that black people felt inferior because they were segregated from white folks, and that segregation made black people feel inferior and it made white people feel superior. Segregation gave black people a false sense of inferiority and white people a false sense of superiority, and that if they tore down the walls of segregation, that black people would feel just as good as white folks felt about themselves. They see how stupid that is? But they actually believed that, and they sold that to black folks. And black folks said, okay, yeah, it makes sense to me. If I can just sit beside the white man or eat beside him, I'll feel better about myself. Da, 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 da. All right, so they did all that marching and all that fighting. Here's the thing. The problem was correctly identified. Yeah, black people felt inferior. Hell, they still do. If they didn't feel inferior, they wouldn't vote for the Democratic Party. Party of perverts, liars, psychopaths, and anti-Christian bigots. And all they do is meditate on blood, okay? A party of thugs, hoes, and rappers. That's who they are. You got to feel bad about yourself to vote for that group of malcontents. I mean, good God Almighty, man, when you look at them, it's like a freak show. It's like the Star Wars bar scene. You got an option to vote for somebody that's going to give you freedom or somebody's going to put you on the plantation. You vote for the joker that's going to put you on the plantation. I say you feel pretty bad about who the hell you are, okay? All right. So they felt bad about themselves then. They feel bad about themselves now. Hell, look how they kill each other in the streets and stuff, man. They're still fighting. Hell, they're fighting worse now than they did then. Can't live with them. You put them in close proximity together, they just raising hell. So everybody, as soon as a rapper gets some money, he get the hell out of him around black folks. I don't live in them ghettos, man. So, but Martin Luther King's premise was correct. What was the premise? The black folks felt inferior. Okay, we got that down. Boop, pat. His solution, end segregation, black folks no longer feel inferior. That was bat blank crazy, all right? The reason why black people felt inferior wasn't because they were segregated from white folks. The reason that black people felt inferior was because their mamas and their daddies and the preacher and the politician and everybody black around them taught them to feel inferior. Got it? The same as they do now. His premise was wrong. Ending segregation didn't make black people feel better about themselves. Isn't that obvious? But you still got the same old no good, greasy line apostate preacher saying, we want freedom. We want equality. We want DEI. We want affirmative action. We want reparations. We want this. We want that. We gonna march until we get it. Man, that's where the inferiority comes from, man. We want to integrate. We want to, but that's what, good God, man, your daddy walking up to you telling you that what you got isn't good enough, that the only way that you got to have something better is to sit beside white folks, and you think you're going to feel good about yourself? And that's what Barack Obama is saying. That's what Michelle Obama is saying. That's what these jokers saying. You can't make it in America if you're black, no matter how hard you try. Your government hates you. The country hates you. The hip-hop industry says, hate yourself. You're an N-word, you're a B-word, you're a W-word. Hell, man, that's a wonder how every black person ain't crazy. It's one that ain't blowing my brains out behind all that. I got the one how I survived. I know how my daddy never told me no crap like that. Nor my mother. They had a certain esteem about them, a majesty. Well, they were always well-groomed, always looking great, always demanded that we were excellent in what we did, always telling us that we could do whatever we wanted. And everybody in my family has achieved greatness, and I feel so sorry for these children that are being told a lie. But Martin Luther King was part of that lie. So, I have a dream speech. Starts on a bad premise. We got to integrate with white folks, and we got to end segregation. Got no problem with ending segregation at all, at all, at all, at all. Do have a problem with forcibly integrating with anybody. People, forced integration is called, in the legal terms, it's called stalking. Woman don't want a man, man stalking her. She go to her house, he looking in the window. She trying to go to work, he following her. She go out for a hamburger, he sitting across staring at her. Don't nobody like anybody like that. And that was the black community with the white community. So Dr. King starts his speech, I have a dream speech. Oh, and he going. He basically starts on the first premise. That is the premise that we have to force our way onto the American people, onto white society. Now, y'all, that's wholly anti-Christian. You know how I know? Our Bible tells us. 1 Corinthians 6 and 10 says, nor thieves, nor the covetous, covetous, thou shalt not covet. The covetous are people who want something that somebody else has. The 10th commandment says, thou shalt not covet their neighbor's wife, their neighbor's horse, their neighbor's possessions, nothing of thy neighbors. And the civil rights movement started out with breaking that commandment. We want what you got. We want to be with you. We want this, we want that from you. Thou shalt not, nor the covetous, nor the extortioner. Oh, the extortioner shall inherit the kingdom of God. Now it says the extortioner shall not inherit the kingdom of God. What is an extortioner, y'all? An extortioner is a person that uses threats, coercion, force to get what they want. So King and his boys down there going to use the force of government to get what they want. Let me give you an example. I use this example in my documentary. It's from The Godfather. All you Godfather aficionados, y'all love this. Godfather comes on. Michael Corleone is sitting there with his girlfriend, Kay. They look across, they see a real scary man. His name is Luca Brasi. Lucas was Vito Corleone, Michael's brother, the Godfather, his hitman. Luca was stone cold killer, and he looked like one. So Kay asked Michael, said, Michael, who is that very scary man right there, talking to himself? Michael says, yeah, that's a very scary man. His name's Luca Brasi. Let me tell you a story about Luca. He said, my father had a son, well, a godson, his name was Johnny Fontaine. Johnny had a contract with this band leader, and he wanted out. The band leader said no. So Johnny came to my father. My father said, I'll take care of it. So my father goes to the band leader, offers him $10,000 to let Johnny out of the contract. Band leader says no. My father said, okay, I'll be back. And he came back. And this time he came back with Luca Brasi. And my father got Johnny out of the contract for a certified check of $1,000, not 10. Kay said, well, how did he do that, Michael? Michael said Luca Brasi put a loaded gun to the band leader's head and promised him that either his brains or his signature would be on the contract. And that's a true story. All right, Martin Luther King Jr. wanted to eat a hamburger beside a white man at a lunch counter. Owner of the lunch counter says no. You ask the question now. Go back to Godfather. Was Vito Corleone a violent man for using Luca Brasi? Of course he was. Let's go again to Martin Luther King Jr. Wants to eat a hamburger beside this white man at a lunch counter owned by a white man. Wants to do it. Man that owns the lunch counter says no. King said, I'll be right back. But this time he brings the federal government. Gets a law passed saying that this man had to let him eat beside this man. Puts a gun to the man's head, the federal government does, and say either Martin Luther King Jr. sits down at that lunch counter or your brain's going to be on that lunch counter. Choose. White man says, sit down and eat. Was Martin Luther King Jr. a violent man? Like Vito Corleone? Didn't they both use the gun of a third party? Yes, they did. Oh, y'all thought Dr. King was nonviolent. He was nonviolent in love, nonviolent in love. You marching to get the government to pass a law. And when the government passes a law, player, no matter how you put it, that's the barrel of a gun. Mao Zedong says all political power is behind the barrel of a gun. When the government passes a law, the threat of violence is implicit. You're going to do what we say, or we're going to block you up. And if you resist, we're going to blow your brains out. And that's what King did. That's what those marches were for. It wasn't for changing people's hearts, like we were supposed to do as Christians. It was using the gun. You want to argue that point? Argue that one with me. You go to Washington, D.C. to get a law passed, you are using the gun. Jesus Christ never went to the Romans to get what he wanted. He changed the hearts of everybody he touched. That's the Christian way. So his whole premise was wrong. The Bible said that the covetous and the extortioner will not inherit the kingdom of God. And we're extorting people in March and still doing it from the church, from the pulpit. No, you change the hearts. You ask God to change the hearts of your opponent. And that's how you change him forever. Walking around worrying about the opinions of man. Worrying about the opinions of others and man. Bible tells us that I have no concern of man. None whatsoever. Matter of fact, the Bible tells us implicitly in Colossians 3:23, whatever you do, work heartily for the Lord and not man. Galatians 1:10, for I am not seeking the approval of man. For I am not seeking the approval of man or God. I am trying to please man. If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ. So he first asked the question, for am I not seeking the approval of man or God? Whose approval am I seeking? Or am I trying to please man? If I were still trying to please man, I would not be a servant of Christ. So King walking around talking about he having a dream. He's having a dream that one day his four little children will not be judged by the color of their skin, by the content of their character. And what our Bible tells you, you don't have to be concerned at all about how man views you. Verse after verse. Please, Mr. White man, don't judge me by the color of my skin. You're supposed to, man, if you got a problem with the color of my skin, that's your problem. Put your hands on me, you're going to have another one. I don't like you because you black. I don't care. I don't like you because you short. I don't care. I don't like you because you white. I don't care. Now, how you feel about that? Instead, I don't like you because you black. Oh, please change the way you feel about me, please. Lord have mercy. So King got us right here running around, not being concerned about how we're viewed by God, but how we're viewed by a sinful man. But isn't that what he said? He's sitting there dreaming about a day that one day he won't be judged by the color of his skin, by man, of course. And then he said, as I have a dream speech, something that was amazingly crazy. In the second treatise of government written by John Locke talked about our freedom. Locke said that our freedom was an inalienable right given us by God. Unalienable. It's a very important word. An unalienable right is a right that's irrevocable, non-transferable, and unsellable. It can't be taken away from you. It's like your DNA. It is like your skin. It is like your eyes. It is yours, given you by God. Thomas Jefferson made this point in our Declaration of Independence when he said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, freedom is an unalienable right given to you by God. But Dr. King said in his speech, and I have a dream speech, he said 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, the Negro is still not free. You gonna believe Jesus Christ, you gonna believe King. Just like the others. Extortioners and the covetous cannot go into the kingdom of heaven, but King used those tactics to try to get white people to accept us. You gonna believe your Bible? You gonna believe Jesus? You gonna believe King? Says we're not supposed to be concerned about how we're viewed by man, but he says he's dreaming about a day that he won't be judged by the color of his skin by man. You gonna believe Christ, or you gonna believe King? Now we're down here. With Jesus Christ telling us we're free. without freedom being a gift from God. But Dr. King said that you're not free. What does it say about freedom? It's very interesting what our Bible says about freedom. In 2 Corinthians 3:7, our Bible says, now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's freedom. So if you got the Spirit of God in you, bruh, you're free. The book of Galatians 5:13 said, you were called to freedom. Brothers, only do not use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. You were called to freedom. 1 Peter 2:16, live as people who are free, not using your freedom as cover up for evil, but living as servants of God. John 8:36, so if the Son sets you free, you are free indeed. Lord have mercy. And there's verse after verse after verse after verse saying that you are free. And King says 100 years after Emancipation Proclamation, the Negro is still not free. Who do you believe? Jesus Christ the King. Told you it was an anti-Christian speech. It was a Marxist speech. Oh, you getting it now, ain't you? Oh, y'all sitting there talking trash about me at the beginning. Vince don't know what he's talking about. Vince Ellison crazy. Vince Ellison, yeah, you see now. And then he talks about peace. He talks about peace. Let me tell you what Martin Luther King Jr. said about peace, y'all. He said, it would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. The sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom. See, we ain't free. And equality. We're not equal. That means we're inferior. See all that stuff? You're not free and you're not equal. You're inferior. If you're asking for equality, that means you're not, that means you're inferior. And you wonder why we think that we still inferior? I told you the leadership taught us we weren't inferior. Here he is saying it. In 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. Those who hope that the Negro needed to blow off steam will now be content and will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. This is what he says. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted its citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. And then he said, when will we be satisfied? We will never be satisfied. Not until righteousness rolls down like water, not until justice rolls down like water, and righteousness like a mighty stream. That's a fancy way of saying never. So King is saying we'll never be satisfied. Nevertheless, Jesus says, peace I leave with you. Peace I give to you. And we'll never be, and then King says, we will never be satisfied. Wow. Y'all, that's a shame. That is a shame. Our Bible has so many verses about peace. Isaiah says, you keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you, because he trusts in you. John 14:27 says, peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. Oh, but we'll never be satisfied. Philippians 4:6-7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything in prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Jesus Christ. Hold it. I thought we were supposed to be asking government for everything. March and fight and raise hell and burn up stuff. What did the Philippians 4:6-7 say? Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to government. I'm sorry. Be made known to God. Government is their God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Jesus Christ. We will never be satisfied. Not until justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. You understand now? Do you get it? Cain tried to give to the government the job of the church. He tried to make the government God, make you love one another, make you march with one another, make you be around one another, make you be brother and brotherhood. That's not the job of the government. The government's job is to make the trains run on time. To make sure that we have an army, we have a Navy, an Air Force, and a Marine Corps, and the Space Force is going to protect us from all enemies, foreign and domestic. To make sure that the roads are paved. Make sure that we have domestic tranquility, so we don't have to we don't have to love each other, but we better get along. I don't have to like you, ain't got to love you, but you better not be fighting and raising hell in the streets. I'm gonna put you in jail now. Don't care how you feel about each other. Don't care how you feel about each other. I don't care if you got a Black Panther and a Klan member staying right beside each other. Y'all better shut up and get along. Because the first one throw a punch, I'm gonna put your behind in jail. That's government's job. I don't like him. I don't care. You better not touch him. That's the job of government. We want to love one another. That's the job of the church, the job of the families, job of our communities, jobs of our civic centers. Yeah, it's not the job of government. And you see it's failed. Everywhere they tried it, it's failed. It doesn't work. Government does not have the power. Government has the gun. The gun, the gun, the gun. And King wanted to use the gun. He wanted to use violence to get what he wanted. Talking about the civil rights movement was nonviolent. There's nothing nonviolent about the civil rights movement. And when you start talking about passing laws to make people do what you want them to do, that's nothing but violence. It's violence 101. I think I might have educated some of y'all today. The civil rights movement was a nonviolent movement. Let me make this plain. To a lot of you ignorant behind Democrats that still don't understand this. Okay, very, very plain. The day that you start talking about passing laws, you're talking about using the gun. The day you start talking about changing the hearts and minds of people is the day that you're talking Christianity. We don't use the gun. We don't use coercion. We don't stalk. We don't use any type of force whatsoever. We do not covet what our neighbors have. We don't demand somebody give us something and they don't want to give it. If you do it in charity and love. I'm going to force the government to raise your taxes, take your money, and give it to me for a poor people's march. Man, are you? Yeah, that's right. We're going to hold a gun to the heads of to Americans with a little bit of money and take it from you and give it to the jokers that don't want to work. That was Martin Luther King Jr. That was his philosophy. That's why it failed. That's why the communists and the liberals love him. He took this mess to the church, made it apostate, and now from the pulpits of America, we have a bunch of stupid, ignorant, jackleg preachers always talking about the poor, the needy. We got to get government to do this and do this. You have a hotline to Jesus Christ. Preacher, why are you asking government for anything? And to the rank and file citizens out there who call yourself Christian, let me hip you to something that you probably have forgotten because you always hear about this begging and crawling, asking government. If Jesus Christ has ordained something from you, it's no one that can stop it. You don't have to march for anything. You got an unlimited bank account. And your ignorant behind don't even know it. You're playing in a junkyard when you could be living in a mansion. You're an alcoholic when you could be just living in peace. You're on drugs. And you hate yourself because they've told you got to look at others to achieve your virtue and your satisfaction and your self-esteem. Baby, it all comes from God. I hope you hear me. And I hope you put aside this cult of personality for this evil ideology. And this man that I hope that before he died, he had straightened himself up with God, Martin Luther King Jr. Because I'm going to tell you, brothers, I'm not going to let this rest. Because I am here to wake you up. So join me tomorrow for another edition of the Vince Everett Ellison Show. All right, friends, Vince Everett Ellison is here. I want you to go to my website. And on my website, you're going to see a lot of great stuff, man. You're going to see that we got t-shirts, we got caps, you got my books, my documentaries, you got all kinds of stuff on VinceSpeaksTruth.com. Go there. We're dropping new t-shirts. We're dropping new merchandise. My new book, The End of Tolerance, is there. The End of Tolerance. Make sure you get it. Make it #1. If you got my first 3, get The End of Tolerance. It's just as good. And it's telling us we have to end our tolerance with these leftists, these Democrats. We can no longer allow them to sexually groom our children. We can no longer allow them to castrate little boys and call them little girls, run God out of the public square, take away our guns, take away our sovereignty. No longer allow it. So go on VinceSpeaksTruth.com. That is VinceSpeaksTruth.com. Hit merchandise. You'll see the t-shirts. You'll see the caps. You'll see the books. You'll see the documentaries. You'll see it all. And let's keep this ball rolling. God bless you.